And when you're erasing Fitzpatrick, Xander, Cam Young, Rahm, Bryson, Rory, and Scheffler, doesn't feel too good when you're going into any tournament, let alone a major. So that's where people struggle with it and have a hard time getting to it. But you can use that to your advantage, because if you for that missed win equity, if you will, you could get it with the made cut equity and then the potential top 10 upside, and then somebody that does sneak through and get the win for you from this group. So that's the other way to look at it as well.
This is the sort of lineup, Alex, that really would have played well at last year's US Open.
It would have, and I think your point about the Masters is a really good one too. I'll make this point as well. Like, the hesitation that I have playing this type of lineup this week compared to the Masters was, at least at the Masters, you had the out of, well, Scottie could win and Scottie lineups as a whole could be bad. It seems less likely that that's the case this week because of how easy it is to build Scottie lineups with like actually good players in all 5 other roster spots. So in this week, you probably do need, number one, to have at least one of your guys like legitimately contend and maybe not win, but you need second place. And if you don't get the winner, you're going to need 3 in the top 10 or something like that, and all 6 to play really well. But man, it's doable. So this type of lineup kind of always makes sense to me. And I think it's always underplayed by the field.
At Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. It's time to win $1 million on DraftKings at the PGA Championship. We're running through all the price and building lineups and the strategy behind all of it. Smash the like, sub to the channel while you're here. Here's how we're starting. There is Scottie Scheffler at 13.9, Rory McIlroy at 12.4. They're the 2 highest priced players. Then there are 5 guys in the $10,000 range. Tambo, I want you to rank them for me. You got this?
Oh, God. The 10K range I can do for you, Pat.
Bryson, Rahm, Cam Young, Xander, and Fitzpatrick, go.
I'm going Cam Young, Fitz, Xander, Bryson, Rahm. Leave those guys down.
Blickle, do you think that's going to be the common sentiment around those guys in the 10K?
Yeah, I think I'd probably flip Xander and Fitzpatrick and then maybe Rahm and Bryson. But other than that, I'm right there with them.
So you've played Aronimink a few times, and especially in Philadelphia Open conditions. So tell us about the course.
This is kind of funny because, I played it years ago in either the Philadelphia Open or the Philadelphia Amateur. I was like 40 pounds lighter, hit the ball 50 yards shorter than I do now. And I had this like very, clear, vivid memory of the golf course and just feeling like I was overwhelmed by the size and the scope of the course. And then I've played it a lot recently on simulators, and it's like, wait a minute, this is not what I remembered. This is not the beast of a golf course that I remember. There are absolutely really long and difficult holes, but then there are also a lot of holes where distance just doesn't matter a ton, and a lot of guys are going to have scoring clubs in their hands, and I think the course might have trouble protecting par.
Wait, and you still live in the general vicinity. Do you think that there is a chance that they can make this firm and fast?
Yes. The problem is it looks like there's going to be rain Wednesday and Thursday, the week of. So similar to this week at Quail Hollow, I think the lead-in weather is great to get firm and fast conditions, but the problem is then like right before the actual tournament starts, it might get tamed by the rain that comes through. And the other thing is, like, if you remember last year at Philadelphia Cricket, very similar time of year, one of the kind of overarching narratives that week was, hey, if this was played 2 months from now in July or August, the rough would be so much thicker, but it's May. And so the grass just didn't have a chance to really grow in that thick, that long. And so the rough wasn't very penal that week. I will say in this area, it seems like everything is growing a lot more this time of year than it was last year. So I think the rough has a chance to be thick. I think the rough has a chance to be long, and I think the course has a chance to be firm coming in. But if it's not the perfect storm of thick rough, firm fast conditions, a little bit of breeze, it's going to be very difficult for the course to hold up.
So do you think this is going to be more of the Valhalla type scoring, the Harding Park scoring, or one of these single digits?
I think it'll be somewhere in between. And the one thing about Valhalla was like that course very much needs the conditions to be difficult for like any holes to be difficult. It's open season when it was as soft as it was for the PGA Championship. I don't think it'll be that way at Aronimink. Especially on holes where they can trick out the pin locations. Now, obviously, like if you have one really tough pin location on a green, you can't play that pin location all 4 days of the event. So you're going to have some days where, every single hole has a chance to, be a little bit easier for scoring conditions. But overall, I think what we'll see more at Aronimink isn't so much that they're making a ton of birdies. It's just that I don't think we'll see a ton of bogeys. We're not going to see, doubles and triples, the kind of carnage that you often see at major championships. Instead, it's going to be when you miss, you're missing in a very, clear and obvious way. And now your up and down is pretty straightforward. And when you're not missing, guys are going to be able to hit a lot of greens, even if they're not able to hit the ball close. It's 25, 35 footers all day long. And then you just add in a couple birdies and all of a sudden you shot 3-4 under.
Keith Stewart will be at the course joining us for the Wednesday show to wrap everything up to give us the course conditions. Tambo, I've already done the research show with Ryan Noonan that's out on the feed right now, and we were trying to figure out that do we want to take the Fleetwood, Henley type players who gain off the tee, have a ton of accuracy, and can be very good with their irons and putter, or do you just lean pure bomber here? I think that's the strategy that we need to figure out before we really hammer down on this.
Yeah, it's going to be, interesting to see how people go about it. I think the more interesting factor when we get to it, of course, I'm always looking from the DFS perspective, Pat, but is the fact that, Scottie Scheffler at 13.9, and then we brought a 5K range back into it this week. So I don't know how the field's seeing it yet and what they're going to be doing from a stat perspective, or how they're going to be planning based on like the off the tee stuff you mentioned or who that leans to. But I do have a good feel on how people are going to be building lineups, even at first look here, just out of the gates. We have almost it could be a perfect storm. It could be, for those that want to go this way. It could also be a perfect storm for those that want to sort of fade this route. But I think we're going to see Scottie Scheffler lineups be very, very popular leading in.
As they should. I have 3 really good betting futures, Blickle, and I was just thinking about, if I have Bobby Mack at 110 to 1 and Fitz at 80 and Rose at 80, do I just bet Scottie Scheffler? Because I kind of think he's going to win.
You definitely can, and it's a Scottie golf course. His approach play has been all the way back in these second place finishes in his last 3 events. So what we've seen in PGA Championships as a whole is that distance is more predictive than accuracy. But when I look at the way Aronimink sets up, I think it's going to be more of an accuracy golf course than a distance golf course. All PGA Championships reward iron play like more than any other event on tour, and I think that too will really come to fruition. And so this strikes me as like the ultimate Scottie major championship setup, and I have absolutely no issue with betting him whatsoever.
So that makes it really interesting. If, let's say, we do lean on approach being the most predictive, Tambo, doesn't that bump Cam Young down a little?
Yeah, I think it would. And that's where, again, like I said, I think it's just going to be dependent on what you're doing around that, but it would do that for him. It would do that for some of the other guys as well. And then it really becomes down like the question of like Scottie versus Rory, because, well, it is $1,500, Pat. You'll find out very quickly that doesn't really matter, at least from first look here. And I can give you more reasons when we get there, but just noting it, I think that's where people are going to be making the bigger decision. So that could be more interesting than what we usually have of like a Rory or Scottie. And do we save and go down to Cam Young versus here when people are already thinking about spending up? Do they think between Rory and Scottie versus spending down? And that's kind of where I think it's going to land.
You both ranked Bryson and Rahm at the bottom of the 10K tier. Alex, with Bryson, is there a chance he can hack this course with his distance? Because we've seen him play well at both U.S. Opens and PGA Championships.
I think it's going to depend a lot on the firmness of the greens. If it's firm, I don't think he'll have a chance to do that. There are just too many holes where they're going to have the ability to tuck pins right over bunkers. And if you don't have the perfect angle with the ability to spin the ball and stop the ball, you're not going to be able to get the ball close. If it's soft, though, then maybe he's able to still, stop the ball from 60 yards out of the rough when he's coming in on some of those holes. So that would really open the door for him. Softer conditions. I wish I had a better idea of exactly how soft it's going to get, but I think it's going to be firm until the Wednesday, Thursday rain. And I think similar to this week at Quail Hollow, that's going to make it not a super receptive golf course. It's just going to mean that it's not as fiery as we'd like it to be.
So Tambo, you said you had a good beat on how the first look lineups are going to be built. Let's build one right now. Let's throw it up. It sounds like Scottie is the first click for most people here. Where do you go next?
Yeah, well, this is again, we'll see how the actual whole lineup shapes out. We'll draw it up here in a second, but I want to note the perfect storm. I've been itching at, just to get this one out here, Pat. But the setup is really insane right now. We're recording this just a little bit early, obviously going in, and so we still have the truest in the background. Well, the 5K range has, for starters, I already posted this out on X about McCarty. McCarty is coming in off a T24, a T12. He's been getting better week after week, even in some of these signatures. He comes out as the first round leader at this event, and then they bring out pricing, and he's $5,700. And I get it. It's McCarty. I'm not like lobbying for this or anything. I'm just saying, so you say, okay, well, it's not going to be him. Well, Harry Hall is at the top of the board, and his price is down there. You've got Hogard. Both the Hogard brothers, including Nikolai, is there at 6,500, I think, is this week's price on him coming into the PGA Championship. Bhatia is down there. Nick Taylor's way down there. There's a lot of guys that are a lot less than you would think that they would be. And that's the thing we talked about a ton. It was last year, Pat, when we actually had the 5K range more often. I think this is the first time this year that I recall. But when we talked about it last year, it wasn't about just do the 5K guys actually play well? Are they good? Like, et cetera, et cetera. It's what it does to everywhere else. And because there's only 20 guys, 19 or 20 between 8 and 9,900, and then there's only 20 guys in the 7K range, it pushes some real big names into the sixes. And then in the fives, you're going through the list there now too, from about 5,700. I think it's like 57, 58 range. You'll see the Collies, the McCartys. I think if you keep going up, Hall and Nick Taylor's there. Is Harry Hall there as well? Yeah, Harry Hall's there. And right now at the truest, McCarty, Hall, Rayton, Hogard, Bhatia, Taylor, all these guys are all leading the tournament as it goes into, the weekend type thing. So just noting that, I think that's going to make Scottie lineups really easy to get to, because if you play just one of those guys, you get into a pretty solid range there of options you can go to.
I'll be curious to know how McCarty ends up finishing at the truest, Alex, because I think he made 200 feet of putts in round one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls down the leaderboard. But I agree with everything Tambo said. The other thing I'll add to that is when you look at the effect of the 5K range, is like it doesn't affect the 9K guys. It doesn't affect the 10K guys. Those guys are all priced where they otherwise would be. But then you get guys like Adam Scott, not playing well at the moment, but he was 9,000 this week, 9,400 or something like that in round 2 showdown, and here he is at 7,500 for the PGA Championship. And so you just get so many guys bumped down into the 8K range who otherwise wouldn't be, bumped down into the 7K range who otherwise wouldn't be. There's no one who's getting the price bump as a result. And so I'm totally with Tambo. I think Scottie's going to be as popular or more popular than we've seen him in any event so far this season.
So what does that do to the second man in, Tambo? And just 2 notes here. 1, Adam Scott cannot be picked by Cust anymore because Cust picked him this week, probably why he's in last place as we're recording this. 2, Christoph Reiten plays without a lot of pressure on him, Tambo. Did you know that his family owns this $9 billion company in Norway?
I did not know that, but what we've seen some of this stuff in the past, right? With the Mav McNeely on the other side of the planet here in America. So I don't know, some of these guys definitely come from money, and I don't know if that matters. Maybe they got something more to prove because of that.
Or you just play with it, make a cut, miss a cut. Well, you can speak to this better than anyone, Blickle, about the pressure that comes, especially with some of these fringe guys making a cut, and where we've had so many signature events, even just getting FedEx Cup points, like coming 19th in the PGA Championship is going to be great for your paycheck, obviously. But for some of these guys that aren't in signature events, that's a ton of FedEx Cup points for them.
It's huge, yeah, and just playing for that status. Now, what I will say is, like, I think while in the moment, while on the golf course, they're not thinking about that as much as you'd expect.
Poulter did,
definitely, but point being, like, especially guys near the top, like this is one of the I think under discussed parts of pressure, which is when guys are near the lead. The nice thing about that is you're at least as confident in your game as you've ever been, because you know that you've been playing extremely well to get yourself into contention. I think the harder type of pressure to deal with is the type of, like, you need to make this cut, and now you're on the cut line. And because you're on the cut line, you know that you've been struggling, you've been making mistakes. So it's a very different type of pressure, but I think it's harder to deal with just because when you're in contention, when you're near the top 10, when you need to get a top 10 finish to get more status, like, you're playing really well. And so that kind of confidence really helps under their gun.
WD notes to deal with right now. Obviously, Morikawa pulled out of the Truist. He's expected to play. Jordan Smith and Chairman Mao, William Mao, pulled out of Myrtle Beach. Not entirely sure why. They're both listed in the field right now. Then you have Jake Knapp, Tambo, who my sources say probably won't be back till the U.S. Open.
It feels that way. Yeah, we were talking about him for this week. Obviously, a lot of people were expecting it. And then, from what they'd seen the previous week, and then he was out again. So now it doesn't look like he'll be back. What wasn't Penge another guy as well?
Penge, yeah, it wasn't Jordan Smith. It was Penge. I got that wrong.
Oh, I was okay. I was like, maybe both. I didn't hear about Jordan Smith, but I wanted to make sure I got that note because I think that was interesting. And he'd said like I was just doing some precautionary care just to see if I'd be good to go for this. So maybe that's interesting. And I don't think anyone will want him. I think he's at 8,000 flat when there's other guys. But I took a stab at the full lineup anyway, Pat. I think I got a rough idea of where we're at with the first lineup you'd asked about. If you want to take a first look.
I do. That pricing is insane for this field. Marco Penge at $8,000. He has to be the most overpriced player in the field.
It's hard to. What about Neiman? 8,200.
Like at least you could tell yourself a story about Neiman. Like Riviera winner Jacob Bridgman 76. Akshay who won at Bay Hill. Where the hell was Akshay? He was in like the 6Ks, wasn't he? Yeah, 76. Yeah. 76, like why is Penge ahead of these guys?
Siwoo Kim, Corey Connors, JJ Spawn. Yeah, there's no reason why Penge is where he is at.
Yeah, Siwoo Kim is going to be an awfully popular play, Tambo, at 79.
He's in there, yes. He was 9,400 this week, and now he's down to 79, and the stats still say that he was playing, top of the world and good to go. So I think he'll be in there. I think what's interesting, I guess, like I just threw together something quickly, and then we'll pick it apart and change it around. But if you just go like Adam Scott at 75, Min-Woo Lee, the projection popper of the year. He just always shows up. Just throw him in there. He's way cheaper now, too. Keegan Bradley is 74. He's playing extremely well this week, and he was popular this week at the exact same price going in or very similar. And then it lands you in that 58 where pick your poison, whether it's Hall, Taylor, McCarty, if he does play well, whoever you want. It could be Nick Taylor. He's playing good right now as well. He's T12. Harry Hall is T3 currently. Like these guys are all possibilities that people could go to there, but that's kind of the build type I see. Obviously, you can flip Scott and Woo and Bradley around to whatever, but I think you leave Siwoo Kim and then you leave the thought of like everybody's favorite 5K guy and just go from there.
If you're gonna take the risk, Blickle, of playing one 5K guy, why not play two and make your lineup better?
You can. I mean, you don't need to though. I think like that's the main way to answer this is what are you necessarily gaining? You can turn Min-Woo or Keegan into, a stud. So like if you went Min-Woo and Keegan and replaced one of them with a 5K guy, now you get to a 9K guy. So like, I guess that's the point of it, but you certainly don't need to do that. You already have all good players here.
Like how many of the Tambo, you like this is like the first look like, hey, these are going to be the popular clicks. I doubt that it's going to be Scottie than a bunch of 7K guys. I think people will try to do Scottie and jam someone else in.
Yeah, that's the next version of it for sure. I just mean like from the early look of what people are seeing to me, Scottie, a 5K guy, and Siwoo is where it goes. Then it is the part we're at now where it's like, okay, figure it out from there. And to your point, maybe people want somebody up there, but Alex brought it up earlier and now we're looking at it again. Like you're in your exact 2v2 you just talked about of like Min-Woo and Keegan or whoever it ended up being. It's like, do you want is Patrick Reed or Tyrrell Hatton or the guys that you want? Like the 9K, lower 9K that gets you to may not be everybody's cup of tea. It's Brooks Koepka, Hideki Matsuyama, $9,100 Tyrrell Hatton, and 9K Patrick Reed. So I don't know if everybody's going to be like, oh, I got to get, so then they're going to have to go further, but then that changes the lineup construction again. So who are you thinking as like a mid-range 9K guy that people would be going for here? Maybe Tommy and I guess Ludwig would probably, I mean, with everything you spelled out, Alex, like Morikawa, every time Morikawa fits somewhere perfectly, he sucks, but this sounds like a perfect Morikawa course. Accuracy and irons?
Yeah, I think Morikawa, Fitzpatrick, a lot of these guys up here look like really good fits. And I think, as is always the case, like I'm more concerned with fit when you get down into the mid-tier range and the cheap guys, because those are the guys who have actual holes in their games where being a great fit, has a more impactful difference than, the guys up top who are always good everywhere and they can play well and contend on any golf course. So it does mean a little bit less to me up top, but when Morikawa's on, there's nobody who has the combination of accuracy and approach play that he has outside of Scottie.
So I'm trying to figure out if we try to build the accuracy irons lineup, you get Fitz, Morikawa, Straka, Siwoo, Aaron Rai, who's having a good go at Myrtle Beach as we're talking about this right now. Then you get back up to 7,500. And weirdly, the guy's kind of Ricky, who's sitting there at $7,400, who fits that mold more than the other guys.
I would also go Henley, Spawn, Berger. I mean, there are a lot of guys, but yeah, I think everyone you named, Ryan Gerard should also be in that group, and maybe Alex Smalley as well. So throughout the board, and I think that's kind of a theme here, is the other thing that this pricing does is it means that no matter what type of lineup you're building, you have so many more options than usual, where especially this season with Scottie lineups, like as soon as you've clicked Scottie, you've been pushed into a range of like, okay, I just chose Scottie. Now I need to find someone between $65 and $7,500, and I need to make that decision 5 times to fill out the lineup. Now, even if you start Scottie, your next choice can be anybody. It can be, encompassing like a $3,000 to $4,000 spread of players. So I'm curious to get Tambo's take on this as well. But like my first thought is that we're going to see a very spread out ownership, particularly in the value ranges, that kind of allows us to just take whoever we think are the best plays down there.
Yeah, I do agree on that. I will say, just flip back to your previous point, though, that ties together with the secondary part was with the Scottie factor. Like it matters more than usual. I know everybody always thinks it's like, well, we got to decide on Scottie first. And we're like, sometimes, well, even if Scottie wins here, it might not be the best situation. I can promise you in something like the $25 specifically. And people think this every week, but there's been tons of weeks that we've seen where Scottie has been up there, not quite won and wasn't needed. And there's been weeks where it's like, even if he would have won where he was close, might not have been still, just because the way the roster construction shook out, or if it was a cut week or whatever. And that's the situation we have here. But there is just so many options. So if you truly think it is Scottie week, that's to Alex's point of like how many it is going to be spread out down low. And like Pat, you were just doing some 2v2s just randomly, just playing around with it in that build that you were on, the non-Scottie one. It's like, yeah, it can be Nick Taylor and an 8K guy, or it could be like this lineup instead. So that's going to be the tricky part, is you really do have to hone in on whether or not you think it's going to be Scottie, because if it is Scottie, there's going to be tons of variations of Scottie, and the spread out area that Alex was just talking about down below just filled up with all those different kind of angles. So I think that's the bigger decision to make here, to Scottie or not to Scottie, because that's what's going to make the difference.
Blickle, do you think that people are going to Scottie?
I do. Yeah. I think, man, 35-40% in single entries and in the mega, something like that.
Yeah. What
was the good single entry that you found when the contest got released?
I love the $200 single entry, 10K to first, 277 people. It's a lot like the conversation that we have of like on Underdog. Do you play a 2-pick play, a 3-pick play, or you go for it all with a 6 or an 8-pick play? And your expected value is lower in such a small single entry like this than if you're playing, the $25 milli or the $4,444 mega. But you're just you're going to take advantage of the edge that you have over the field so much more often in this type of contest. And I think that's a really nice way to build the bankroll and go after tickets and then take your shots on the huge money.
I never realized how much a bad mattress was wrecking my sleep until I switched to Helix, especially now that getting a full night's sleep simply can't happen with the baby around. I used to wake up in the middle of the night overheating, my back would be tight in the morning, and every time my wife moved, it felt like an earthquake on the other side of the bed. Not that she could be Typhoon's tag partner, but it was a rumble from the other side of the bed. Now, completely different. I'm sleeping throughout the night, when I can, when the baby's not waking me up, and when I do wake up, I feel rested, and honestly, my sleep tracking greatly improved. The best part with Helix is how easy they make it. You take these sleep quizzes, it matches you to the right mattress based on how you actually sleep, and it just shows up at your door. No wandering around a mattress store for 3 hours pretending to know what medium firm cooling support means. And there's a reason Helix is the most awarded mattress brand out there. Once you sleep on one, you get it. Take advantage of the Memorial Day sale, the best of the web, by going to helixsleep.com/Mayo right now and get yourself 27% off your new mattress. Underdog's expanding the game. You already know their player picks. Pick higher or lower on player stats. Today, Underdog prediction markets are live in 25 states. Back your squad with spreads, handicap for closer game, or totals, higher, lower combined score, combined with player picks for bigger payouts. New customers play $5 on fantasy, get $75 in fantasy bonus entries. Code Mayo. Team picks, player picks, all on Underdog. I'm not saying to fade Scottie here because I do think he's going to win. So I'm obviously going to play him in a lot of lineups, Tambo. But if you didn't want to play him and just try to adjust your lineup a little bit, knowing that everything is spread out, and as Blickle pointed out, that you can probably play whoever you want, regardless of ownership, because if you just, as long as you don't go Scottie, Siwoo, Cam Young, which is probably going to be pretty popular, or whatever that turns out to be, you might be all right. I'm looking at Rahm at 10-4, that everyone's just done with Jon Rahm right now. Everything that Alex spelled out, like accuracy, irons, if it's not Scheffler, it's Rahm of these top guys.
Yeah, gotta love the fact too. Totally different and unrelated, but kind of not. We are on another major show together, but the Masters, everybody wanted Jon Rahm, and then he didn't do anything for them, so now nobody wants Jon Rahm. And so I think that's at least somewhat interesting for sure. And then also, Pat, just from a completely random perspective, but the lineups we were just building with Nick Taylor and then a couple 6K guys, well, everybody wanted Rahm at the Masters. Everybody wanted Cam Young and Xander this week. You can legit build the Rahm, Cam Young, Xander. You can get really aggressive here and still be in basically that same build. You may not even need the 5K guy if you don't want him. I'm just saying if you went to the 5K guy, you could still get a whole lot more. That's why this week and weeks like this are fun, because you do have so many different ways that you can go about it in combinations. And another lineup will have Scottie and 2 mid-range guys, but if the board has Rahm, Young, and Schauffele in the mix, you'll have a similar bottom to those lineups, but a way better top with these 3 guys, if that's how it shakes out, of course.
Yeah. With the one I have up on screen right now, Alex, you don't even have to go down into the 5s. You go Gerard, Smalley, Rye, 3 guys that we just said fit that particular mold that we were talking about.
Yeah, I think this is going to be I think this will be the most common build structure outside of Scottie lineups. Maybe only 2 of these top end guys, so that you can still kind of live in the 7s and get the super underpriced guys like Akshay or Siwoo Kim, someone like that, or even in the 8K range with a Henley type player. But it just shows again, how many great lineups that everyone that builds a lineup this week is going to have a lineup that looks awesome on paper. No one's going to build a really crappy lineup that has no chance of succeeding. The pricing makes it really, really easy to build lineups where you're going to stare at it and you're going to say, oh my God, how can this possibly lose? All my guys are going to make the cut and finish top 20. I've got 6 studs in my lineup. And obviously that's not going to be the case. Someone's going to have, some surprise poor performances, missed cuts, and obviously in other lineups, you're going to have all 6 make the cut, but no one's going to contend. So it's going to be a week where I think very, very high scores are going to end up taking this thing down.
If you want to do your research and then use the optimizer or the classic fantasy national simulator, you can get all of that at the rabbit hole right now. BetSportsGolf.com/Mayo get you 25% off any of the levels. All the levels are exactly the same. You get your Discord, you get your optimizer, you get your simulations. Everything like that is in there. And if you do it this week using that code Mayo, I will draw 1 lucky person to get a free year of BetSports Golf. So go do that right now if you're serious about winning some money and building some lineups. What do we do with soft pricing, Tambo, when it's like this? How do we, because Alex just said that all the lineups are going to look really good. How do we navigate that now?
Yeah. So one thing I really like to do from a strategy perspective, and I've talked about it a ton in the past, people love, getting tidbits and thoughts around this, but Pat, we've talked about building in sets, and we talked about skill set lineups with Rosin back in the day. And we've talked about it on this show with Alex and with you on here and going through these things. And I think one of the things is if all the line, even in that last one, like Alex said, that'll be the next way that people go about it. Okay, true. But then what if we said, okay, if you think Smalley and Gerard, let's use those 2, are guys down low that you kind of like, but they also are a certain type of player, Pat. Well, then you might want to do a bottom-up build where you're building a lineup around, okay, if those are my guys and they make everything affordable, they'll make any type of all-star lineup we want, then why not etch out a lineup that also suits that type of golfer? So you start from the bottom up because, of course, we can afford anyone we want. So can everybody else. But now, Pat, you go to say, okay, who fits the mold of those guys and build the next 4 in and start doing your comparisons off of that, especially for those playing smaller amounts of lineups. But if you do have a full portfolio, I always advise this, and you can fully do this, just building in sets where you say, okay, I'm going to build a pool of guys that are very similar. Give me 20 lineups from them. Now I'm going to start over. I'm going to get a pool of bombers and build lineups with them. So while you will still have all-star lineups. You will still have a set of each all-star lineup that fits the mold, but they will be correlated in a way. And then obviously if there was a weather advantage, you could do it with waves or this, that, and the other. But do you know what I mean, Pat? Like if you like Smalley and Gerard and you feel like they're the same type, let's stack 4 guys on top of them that are your favorite that also fit that mold above them.
So here's what I ended up with here. We have $9,400 left to spend, so maybe this could work itself out. We have Henley, Morikawa, Fitzpatrick, Alex, with Gerard and Glover. And what I did was go to the rabbit hole and sort by distance from the edge of the fairway, just guys that are going to hit the ball in play a ton. Cam Young, 10th in that, by the way, in case people were wondering. I wonder if we could fit Fleetwood into this, see if he ends up fitting. Now, we're just short of it, but these are sort of the accuracy iron guys at the very highest end, Alex.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would do here is I'd probably take Glover out and try to go with 2 options there that are more balanced. Because I mean, this range, yeah. If you go Siwoo Kim, you're going to end up with perfect.
Berger.
I mean, that Berger fits so perfectly from a skill standpoint and just from being a good value at 7,100. You could also try and do like Akshay Bhatia and Ricky Fowler, who you mentioned earlier, who also fit. So many options here, but I think the one thing that I know that I'm going to do personally this week with my lineup is I'm going to make sure that I feel very, very good about all 6 guys, because it's just so easy to build a lineup with 6 great players, and I don't think Glover's quite going to make that cut for me.
Glover wouldn't. What is your risk tolerance, Tambo, for guys that low? Even because you have the guys that everyone feels really good about in the 50th. You mentioned them: Nick Taylor, Matt McCarty, Harry Hall, whoever it might be. I mean, these guys don't have a exponential chance more of making the cut than someone like Lucas Glover.
Yeah, I mean the risk appetite for me is always usually much higher than most. I'll say that, especially because I'm going to be playing the $25 maxing that out type of thing. So like I'm going to have to beat a lot of people, therefore I'm going to have to take on a lot of risk for the reward. You don't always have to get crazy. I'm not trying to get stupid in any means, but that's why I'm kind of going with my thought that I just had, and then to Alex's point, you can kind of fine tune that. Just throw them all in there. Well, that's where you end up getting those value plays, which clearly you have the risk appetite for if you're letting them into your player pool, but then you may not be getting them in the way that you want them. And I think too many people review things after it's already over and done and say, the winner was on this. That makes a whole lot of sense. And they review after, but they don't review before. But you're putting all your money in. It's like just putting your money in on a thing. Like it's basically going to the casino, Pat, and just saying, which is fun for some, but it's like, yep, I'm going to put on 33 and hope that hits. Well, you didn't have to do much review. You just threw it on a number and saw what happened. But you can, in this case, you can look at your lineups before and go, okay, I am getting some Glover, but what is that looking like? I wanted him in there. I have a bit more risk appetite for him. I'm getting him in all those lineups with the Henleys and the Fitzpatricks and the Morikawas, like you said. Well, then I feel good about those builds. And for me, I'm building them out that way. So just starting it that way, but I'm definitely willing to take on some of those plays if they make sense for the roster constructions that I'm putting together.
I think my objection with Glover is not necessarily his downside. Like I'm the exact same way as Tambo. I take on a lot of risk, and I do so confidently and without much reserve. The problem is, what are you getting as the opposite end of that risk? If he actually plays well, what are you getting? And with Glover,
major champion,
for what, 15th place, 20th place? Whereas if you go to someone in the same price range, like say a Nick Taylor, I think that gives you a lot more upside for a similar downside.
You would probably in that range, whether it be Glover, because he was 76, so we ended up making it work. I can't find anyone below. Maybe Billy Horschel at 55 would make more sense.
It could be anybody is always my point, though. Alex is dead on, but it's like I always say, DFS is how, not who. It's like my example would be, okay, Glover, just Glover. I'm just using one specific lineup. And to Alex's point, you should love your lineup if you're putting it in, especially if you're playing less lineups this week, but you should love all your lineups. But just Glover, you can go Morikawa, Fitzpatrick, Henley, Siwoo, Corey Connors. All right. Well, the last 5 I could see being the top of the board. If that's the top of the board and Glover does just get me that T15 or T18, might be enough. But at least I've got Glover in a place that I would want him. So it's not who, it's how. And that lineup that I put together there is the one that I would be just throwing out there. But that's just an example. So I'm looking at it from that perspective. Don't disagree as a single one-off play. There's probably 10 other guys around him that we could go to instead. That's for each person building their lineups out there to put together. But that's just a quick example of how I would be thinking about it in this situation.
You hit on a very interesting conundrum that I think that people are going to have. Blickle, I'll throw it to you because you do a lot of these ownership projections. I kind of identify that Siwoo is undervalued at $7,900. What does that do to Connors, who started to play well and the PGA Championship of all the majors? I mean, people point to him as like he's pretty good at the Masters. Wasn't so hot this year, but historically he's played the PGA Championship really well too.
Yeah, I mean, this gets back to what I talked about earlier, where I said like I think ownership's going to be really really spread out because so typically like one of the big indicators of okay who could really get out of control when it comes to ownership is that number one, lineups are like often being funneled to this price range that the player's in, and then number two, in that price range, the player doesn't have a ton of competition for who it, for who's the best option, who's the highest probability play in that range. So in Connor's case, you don't have either of those instances where there are plenty of guys in that range who are competing with him and do look like great plays. So Siwoo Kim, you can go lower and you can find Adam Scott and Keegan Bradley and Akshay Bhatia. So you can go a little bit up higher and find Sepp Straka, right? So you have plenty of competition in his range. And then also no lineups are being funneled into that specific price range. Lineups are going anywhere. You can go into the 6Ks. You can go to the 5Ks. You can live in the 8s or the 9s. You can do whatever you want to do this week for the PGA Championship. So I think Connors could end up being a very, very, not like super low owned play, but just someone who like really stands out. Is this guy clearly deserves more ownership than he's getting. But I think that's going to be true for a lot of players.
So you could kind of flip the script because we've been going with these total driving, good accuracy, good iron players. If we flip it a little bit, the one that I have up on the screen right now starts with Bryson. It's like Bryson, Brooks, Goddard, 1, 2, 3, Kitayama, Sam Stevens, and Minwoo Lee. You can forge a lineup that way too. If I do think that the common narrative, Blickle, is going to be what we just kind of pointed out, like the Straka types along with your studs or the Aaron Rise, that if you just went full bomber lineup, maybe that just ends up being the hack.
It definitely could be. And it's always nice in DFS to stack bombers because in addition to the possibility that the course ends up really rewarding that, bombers typically make more birdies than they're expected to make given whatever score they shoot. So you also just get that, DraftKings scoring advantage where maybe they all finish somewhere between like 10th and 30th, but they're between 5th and 20th when it comes to actual DraftKings scoring. And so you get there that way. So I'm always in favor of distance lineups, especially when you get on courses where you don't quite know how it's going to test the golfers. And at least with the PGA Championship too, like you have a history of this tournament in and of itself really rewarding distance. So even though I think accuracy is going to matter more than distance, if I'm building 3 lineups this week instead of one of them is certainly going to be a distance stack.
Are you surprised, Tambo, that Michael Brennan is 66 and Nikolai Højgaard 65? That seems wrong.
No, the Højgaard price is crazy. People want him at 78. I think they would still wanted him at 75 here. So if he's 65, I can definitely imagine him picking up some steam as the week goes on, just based on who's around him and just what the appetite has been for him. But by the way, he's also 5 under through 2 days right now at the Truist. So, there's going to be those factors that come through as well on what people actually end up doing. But I don't know, like from the Bombers perspective in the lineup that you have up there, I'll say this, like that would be a lineup that makes sense. And if it's to each your own and want that for their lineup, I agree. But to Alex's point earlier, do you like 6 guys that are in that lineup right now? Do I really want, it's not even, do I want a lineup with Bryson, Brooks, and Goddard? It's do I want a lineup without Scottie, Rory, Rahm, Cam Young, Xander, Fitz, all these guys? Like that's where I struggle a little bit. And I think the other thing, Pat, that you said earlier with like the Siwoo factor, and I think there will be by the time we get there, like one thing I'm very confident of, it doesn't matter what day it is, Siwoo is going to be popular this week and even more in higher stakes, single entry, smaller field. But he's another guy that you can figure it out and get different. What if Siwoo is your 5th guy in and not your 4th guy in or something like that? You know what I mean? Or if he's your last guy, what if you just start lineups with Siwoo Connors, both at 7,900? You can get like Sepp Straka, Bobby Mack, Cam Young, and then where does that land you? Maybe that's a little too, maybe they don't get to be your last guy in, but I'm thinking like, I'm just throwing guys out there that we might actually want to play. What's Cam Young do for that lineup? You probably go a bit below 7,900, maybe like a Akshay or something.
Yeah, you'd be able to get Bridgman, Akshay, Minwoo, or Adam Scott. So you could throw Akshay into that mix. This is the kind of lineup that I like this week, Blickle. I do worry that we're giving up too much at the top, though, just based on the winners that we've seen at the PGA Championship being like top 10 guys.
I do hear that concern, but I also think, like, would you be shocked if Sepp Straka and Akshay Bhatia were duking it out for the PGA Championship title on Sunday? So
Yes, I would.
I wouldn't. I think both of those guys have very real win equity, and obviously, like, Cam Young could be up there too. And so,
Yeah, Cam Young's still in it. That was my point. Not to cut off, but like we said,
Yeah.
like you talked, we got a top 2 guy right now. Realistically, the way it's been playing out, Rory's up there, of course, with Scottie, but just noting it, Cam Young has been getting the love, and he's there. So it's not like you're going without potential win equity. And then I think the guys behind are the ones that could pop up there. They could be the RIP to golf career Mito Pereira, but just noting it could be that type of person who ends up not winning it, but they are definitely in the mix. And it's like the winner becomes Cam Young, but your Siwoo, Straka, Akshay were the guys that were up there with him, and the others were just Corey Connors doing his top 10 thing, and Bobby Mack hanging out and trying to make a run on Sunday and coming up just short or something. So I think that's the type of lineup that, well, again, people say, well, that one will be popular too. Well, they can't all be popular. That's where the constructions get spaced out enough, but just showing as a different way to play a popular Siwoo, whereas he will mostly be in every type of build. At least that build's slightly different overall.
the other thing that I'd say, Pat, is if you want to take the approach of, like, okay, well, what if it is a bomber week? You can do a bomber stack where you're also focused on approach play, where you're not using Bryson because his approach play stinks. You're going to either Cam Young or even Rory would work in that type of lineup, but Rahm would work really well. Xander is a phenomenal irons player, so you can start that way to your bombers lineup, and then Woodland, Kitayama, Nikolai Højgaard, Keith Mitchell. You're going to players who, yes, if distance matters more than what we currently expect, then you're really going to benefit. But also, if approach play still matters as much as we think, you're going to benefit. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds there, where just because you're trying to go in on one skill set doesn't mean that you can't think about another within that lineup as well. And all of these guys have that combination of distance off the tee and strong approach play. And then you can have other lineups that are like all distance and putting, and that's the lineup where Bryson fits.
The other way that we can go about this is try to figure out where the soft spots are going to be in the pricing. Obviously, you're going to most people will probably either try to jam Scottie and then like the next highest guy that they can afford after they build the rest of their lineup after Siwoo gets put into it. Or if people start with Cam Young, then they're going to go to Rahm or Xander or Fitz. The big thing that kind of stuck out to me building these through and trying to come up with these lineups is anyone going to own Rory?
Just was going to say the same thing, Pat. We built all this stuff. We've had all these conversations. We talked about it a ton, but no Rory. And then also, I can't even find him on the board right now so far this week. I don't know how he's faring so far, but it doesn't seem to be great. I think he's like in 30th or something. And I know it's early still, but just the point being, at 12-4, when it's so easy to get to Scottie, like I mentioned earlier, it does feel like many people are going to end up on Scottie. Alex, you do a lot of the ownership, and everything that you do over at FTN. What's your thought on if Scottie, you mentioned earlier a number, and I know it's early and you're just throwing a range out there, but if Scottie's 30 to 40, put a big range on it in single entry, where does that leave Rory in your mind? Is it still 18 because he's Rory, or is it like, man, he could actually show up at 10 to 12 here or something?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that number one, it depends on the live guys, where like I don't have a great sense of what people are going to think of Rahm. I know we talked earlier about the fact that like there's a chance that Rahm's going to slip through the cracks. No one's going to want him because he failed at the Masters, but he also had his literal like best live performance ever since the Masters. So people might be right back in on Rahm. I think Bryson's the one who's definitely going to slip through the cracks. But if those guys are both in check, then I could see Rory projecting 15, 20%. But whatever he projects, I think there's a chance he's going to come 5 to 10% lower than that in single entries and in the mega. So yeah, I think Rory's got a chance to be 10%, 8%, and probably more like 12, 13, something in that range, but very intriguing. And the other thing is it's easier to take Rory and another stud. Like Rory Cam is a championship than typical Scottie lineups have been to build all season, just because we have the 5K range. So I think not just going to Rory, but actually pairing him with another stud, and then you're just kind of in the range that you have to go to with Scottie, but that's still a good range, right? Rory, Cam, Nikolai is such a great start, and It's not difficult to fit whatsoever.
No, that leaves you with 7,000 remaining, Tambo, for your final three guys.
Yeah, that's what I just set up on the board. I was going to note this too. Alex does a great job talking about this always when we do the Leverage Lane show, and it's about the combinatorial ownership and how things make another thing move. Meaning, if it's Scottie, well, then yes, there's going to be more of these 5 and 6K guys, even if it's spread out. If it ends up not being Scottie, I don't think it would be here. I'm just noting this. It's like, okay, that will change things. I wonder if the top of the board and the way it actually shakes out at Truist ends up making the difference where someone's like, yeah, I got Scottie, and let's say right now they're thinking McCarty or Hall because they're up there and that's who they end up with. But then let's say it is Hogard who prevails and is the only guy that's sitting up there at the end of Sunday. And people are like, well, I can get Hogard and just bring Scottie down to Rory and make a small change because there's 20 options in the 7Ks that I can still just funnel around the extra $500 to $1,000, depending on where they're looking for it. That's where I think it could make a difference as well on what we end up seeing the Rory ownership at, and then where that changes down low. But yeah, Hogard at 65 should be popular no matter what.
The 7K, the 6 to 7K range, Blickle, we've kind of identified Nikolai as a guy who really stands out in that sense. You like Berger. I don't think that Berger is going to get a ton of juice at $7,100. Who is the other guy that people actually want below this, though, I guess is my question, because it's just a bunch of guys like, oh my God, really?
Yeah, it's not easy to figure out who people are going to. One thing I'll say about Berger is, like, I would not play Berger in this lineup. This lineup is telling a story if you want the big giant carry distance off the tee, and Berger's playing the Fitzpatrick like stinger that's going to run 1,000,000 yards. So up a little bit higher, there are two guys who very much fit this, and that's Kitayama and Woodland. We've talked about them already. I think Keith Mitchell would fit this type of lineup. Going down cheaper, you've got like a Pearson Coody, I think. Obviously hasn't played as well as he was playing early in the season, but Wrighton fits it really well, and he's playing well. So there absolutely are options, and people are going to be interested in playing. I think Thor Bjornsson would fit this pretty well. So it's not like there's no one to play.
Thor Bjornsson's really interesting because everyone was all over him, Tambo, and then just gave up when he blew 2 wins. But, he was in contention for 2 wins at the same time.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. When you said that name, I was like, what does he mean? Where's he at? 6K. That's crazy too. It's, again, I know it's like people say, oh, why? It's not that crazy. He hasn't done that much, but it's like 6K. That just seems really light. And at the end of the day, to Alex's point earlier, not everybody can play everyone down here. And that could be the guy that ends up getting squeezed between the guys that we talked about, whether it's Coody, Gerard, Hogard that are above, and then use the guys down below that we talked about, like Hall, Taylor, McCarty, etc. Well, he just lands right in the middle at 6K flat. And while it is just a pivot, that could be a game changer. If that's the made cut with upside, when the, 3 of the other 4 or 5, 6 that I mentioned, they all miss the cut, and the other ones don't really come through and just fade to DFL on Sunday. It's like, well, then Thor could be really valuable at 6K flat. So, and he fits the build. So I like that call out for sure.
Leverage Lane with Blickle and Tambo will be live on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel on Wednesday morning. If you're looking to get more of an update on this with updated ownership, everything, we want to get this out early so people can start building their lineups, getting excited to win the $1,000,000. You being from the Northeast and living there, Blickle, is there a Northeastern style golf course and player, like this is a Donald Ross design, that maybe that's an angle that we can take here?
I'm not the guy to ask this question because I don't look at, geographical location a ton. I've said this before, but like I do think this fits the category of like course history and things like that, where if you're like my dad and you're not going to do a ton of research and you're just looking for some like basic course fit signal, you can find some basic course fit signal in that. If you're taking the time, putting the effort in to actually evaluate course fit and evaluate how each player fits that course fit, then you don't need the geographic location. It's not helping you. It's just, it's just like a shorthand to try and find some of the actual signal that you're finding. So I'm not looking at that sort of thing. The one thing I will say that does carry over a little bit and that you do get here at Aronimink is in the Northeast, you get more undulation, you get more elevation change. And it's not the actual elevation change that I think matters. It's knowing how to play shots out of every single type of lie. Very similar to Augusta, by the way, where like you're going to get some severe right to left lies. You're going to get some severe uphill lies, severe downhill lies, and you're going to get that on a range of shots. You're going to get that on long irons. You're going to get that on, half wedges with a downhill line. You need to know how to hit that shot. And so maybe there's some carryover in that way, but good luck actually like figuring out who does that well and who doesn't, because that's a teeny tiny sample, and I don't even know where I'd begin to try and find that sample.
Well, if you really want to go find the guys that do specifically what you said well, Tambo, it's the 9K range of all the guys no one wants to play. Reed, Hatton, Hideki, Thomas, Rose, those are those guys.
We can get some green jacket guys in there. Yeah, if you want to get Dustin Johnson to finish it out in the 6K flat range, you could do that too. But it is interesting that's what I was saying earlier, Pat, when we talked about going, get a better guy. And yes, agreed, better golfer, better player, better ranking, better, etc. All these different facts. Yes, factually, but it's to me, it's always like, what does the field feel? And will they feel like Hatton at $9,100 is a better price or a better guy? I don't know if they're going to like that as much. Hideki, 9,200, Brooks, 93. But I think if you just wanted to build a lineup that way, it is intriguing to say like a Rose, I don't know, what'd you say? Rose, even Rose, Hatton, Reed out of the gates just to start it off. That still leaves you the $7,500. And you've got three pretty solid golfers with a lineup that's currently fading 9.6 and above.
Are we enough years removed from his last PGA Championship win that Justin Thomas is just going to randomly spike again, Alex?
It's possible, and he's playing pretty well so far this week as chalk. So, yeah, wouldn't be surprised me if he's a popular option at 94, at least more popular than some of the guys around him like Hovland, Rose. Hideki's playing terribly right now, so he might be really low on next week.
They got to be factoring in the trophies that he's got at this tournament, like this, not this course, this tournament, the PGA Championships he has, because how is he 9,400? And again, I know he's playing really well right now as we speak, but it's like, what was his price when Siwoo was 94 at the truest? Wasn't JT in the sevens?
Yeah, I think he's like 75.
Yeah, something like that. Now they basically flipped them. He's 70, Siwoo's down to 79 and JT's up to 94. That's pretty wild. He's right next door to, Fleetwood, Oberg, Morikawa, all these guys. And then on top of some of the other ones. So yeah, maybe they know something we don't, Pat, but 9,400, even having him in there, you'd still have 6,500. You could close it out with Hogard, that lineup you just had up. And then you could play the Hogard brothers. You could play Gerard in there if you wanted, whatever. But yeah, you can, that's at least somewhat interesting. Again, you got to feel, I know some will feel like you're leaving the win equity off, but it is still a PGA Championship. We could definitely see, some of these guys are, do well and at least one of them come through. So somewhat interesting if you look from that perspective.
Well, if we just take the 9s and 8s as a whole, we kind of identified that everyone down to Morikawa, and even Morikawa, who knows what his ownership ends up coming in at, that everyone else, it's really hard to build a case that they're going to garner, hell, even double digits at this point, based on the builds that we've come up with so far. That who are the guys, Blickle, that you do like here and the guys that you don't like?
I'll tell you what, there's a name in the 8K range, upper 8K range, that I don't expect to get much attention. He's playing really good golf of late. He's playing well right now. It's Patrick Cantlay. Yeah. 7th, 12th, 8th. And at this moment, he's 5 under through 10 holes in round 2. And he's playing well. And the thing is, he's playing well in the categories that we want him to play well. Like the iron play has been awesome. He's always been pretty accurate off the tee. The one area that's really held him back this year and has kept him from, really getting into contention is actually putting. And historically, this is a guy who rolls in a lot of putts. So I wouldn't bank on the cold putter sticking around for long.
So for me, it's weird that I would go to Cantlay as well, Tambo, but that's where my eyes were heading. It was him or Hatton.
Yeah, I think both will be overlooked. I wouldn't be surprised that even if Cantlay has a pretty good week, and I mean he's crushing it right now, but even if he has a pretty good week, I could still see him going a little bit overlooked just because of this price tag. And usually it's the opposite. I've talked for years about the Best Buy pricing. He's not 9K. You can get him for the low price of just 8,900, less than 9K, but it's more about how the build's set up. And then also just the names above and below that I think there's still going to be interest where people would either be, 700 or 800 above or below him by the same 700 or 800. So I think he's a pretty unique spot at 8,900, could still be held in check either way.
So how do you finagle one of these guys, Blickle, into your lineup? Like if you wanted to go double barrel, low 9 or 8K guy, that you could go Cantlay and let's say Robert McIntyre in your lineup. What does the rest of the lineup have to look like now? Like, can you go and spend up again to get one of those studs and just drop back into the similar range?
You definitely can. The first thought that I have is like you can build the type of lineup that I built at the Masters that did pretty well, which is like the just hyper balanced lineup where your cheapest guy, I think my cheapest guy was Siwoo at 77 that week. And maybe your cheapest guy is Siwoo Kim this week at 7,900. So you can build that style of lineup where, yeah, I mean, this is really, really solid. You could also try to go up one. And I think part of the reason why I think Cantlay is going to slip through the cracks here is because even if he is one of the more popular options when people are in that range, we've just seen this kind of thing all year where the field views this 10K range. Fitzpatrick, I'll even throw Morikawa and Oberg in there. Maybe Tommy gets in there as well, but like the field views a massive tier break from those guys to the Hovland, Rose, Thomas, all the way through, Cantlay, Goddard, Spieth, Lowry, McIntyre, this whole crew. So what most of the field is going to do is when they're in this, like, let's say 8,800 for 2 spots range, they're not picking 2 guys in those upper 8Ks. They're looking for one additional stud. Can I go get Morikawa or Fitzpatrick or Xander? And then they go down to the 7K range where they think the players have very little separation in talent between, the Adam Scotts, Keegan Bradley, Akshay Bhatia, and that range that we just talked about with like Goddard and Spieth and Lowry. So I think you can do it where your 2 8K guys are just a deviation off the 1 stud plus 1 7K guy, or you can just build the hyper balanced lineup and say, I'm building a lineup that hopefully tells the story of all of the cheap chalk failing, where it doesn't mean that like every player like Nikolai Højgaard or Akshay Bhatia are going to miss the cut. But what if the best performance of any popular player under $7,500, let's say, is a 30th place finish, and you can get 2 or 3 top 10s and 3 or 4 top 20s out of some 8K guys? Now you're in business.
That's essentially just what happened at this year's Masters, isn't it, Tambo?
Yeah, that's like Alex said, that's like how you get to that type of lineup. But I don't think a lot of people like to go there, Pat. So that's why it could be, to your advantage. It's because when you're doing this, it's like I always make fun of my dad, of course, on here and say like he'll love the leaderboard if it was this, because he actually knows who everybody is and he's seen them and they've won majors and this, that, and the other. That you could throw your other guys in here like Spieths and there's tons of guys in this balanced range. But it's another line that Alex uses all the time. It's like it's not just who you're playing, it's who you're not playing. And when you're erasing Fitzpatrick, Xander, Cam Young, Rahm, Bryson, Rory, and Scheffler, doesn't feel too good when you're going into any tournament, let alone a major. So that's where people struggle with it and have a hard time getting to it. But you can use that to your advantage, because if you for that missed win equity, if you will, you could get it with the made cut equity and then the potential top 10 upside and then somebody that does sneak through and get the win for you from this group. So that's the other way to look at it as well.
This is the sort of lineup, Alex, that really would have played well at last year's US Open.
It would have, and I think your point about the Masters is a really good one too. And I'll make this point as well. Like the hesitation that I have playing this type of lineup this week compared to at the Masters was, at least at the Masters, you had the out of, well, Scottie could win and Scottie lineups as a whole could be bad. It seems less likely that that's the case this week because of how easy it is to build Scottie lineups with like actually good players in all 5 other roster spots. So in this week, you probably do need, number one, to have at least one of your guys like legitimately contend and maybe not win, but you need second place. And if you don't get the winner, you're going to need 3 in the top 10 or something like that and all 6 to play really well. But man, it's doable. So this type of lineup kind of always makes sense to me. And I think it's always underplayed by the field.
I'll be back on Monday with Jeff and Cust in studio to do the bets, the picks, the one and done, the Anderkirch. You're going to want to pay attention to that. Then I will have the best bet show, myself, Cam, and a special guest on Tuesday, Keith and I on Wednesday. Alex, any final thoughts on this pricing on DraftKings for the PGA Championship?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say about it is, typically when we're building DFS lineups, we want to balance high probability plays with these low owned separators. And usually high probability plays mean you need some chalk, right? You're not going to fade all the chalk. You need some chalk. This is a week where I don't think that's true. You can play 6 low owned guys because you're probably going to be able to find 6 low owned guys who actually project really well and are high probability plays just from one reason or another. The field isn't on them. So I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to have a more contrarian lineup than I usually have as a result.
Tambo, it's going to be Rory or Bryson, I think, are the two. If you start your lineup with one of those two, just all bets are off. Like, you do whatever you want.
I agree. I think for me, it's going to be Rory. I'm pretty confident in that. Just looking at it early, I don't want to just. Alex made a good point previous of like it's different than the Masters where you have 90 guys that's really 78, that's really X, Y, and Z after everything gets shook out. Here, you've got a lot more options in the way they set up the pricing. It is hard to leave off these guys up top, but if you go Rory, you can still get a Cam Young, Xander, whoever you want, maybe 2 9K guys and sneak down to the bottom that way, get unique still. And then I think my last tip would just be what I talked about earlier, Pat, with the the popular guys. Don't just phase them out. It's how, not who. You can think about how you're playing them, what your total construction looks like. And remember, a bunch of different people are going a bunch of different ways. If you're not literally playing all of the exact chalk and the highest owned guys together, you're probably okay. But look at the rest of the lineup and just make sure it makes sense. Love your lineup, like Alex said earlier, and have fun. It's a major week. We don't get these. We only get 4 throughout the year. This is only number 2, so it's exciting. But $1 million up top, 2 ways. Very good luck to anybody in the majors, the megas there. And then on top of it, all those other good contests that are coming out as we speak.
ShipItNation.com is where you can find all Tambo's work. FTNFantasy.com is where you can find all Blickle's work. And again, on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, they will be live on Wednesday morning, finalizing everything from the DFS perspective. For me, I told you, I'm going to be back. The Substack free newsletter will get sent out on Sunday evening following the Truist and Myrtle Beach. Hopefully we get some money out of it. Wouldn't that be nice to go into a week actually winning some money? It's a long shot, but we'll see what goes on. But you can start that for free down there. Have a full course preview. The research show with Noonan is also already out, so please go support that. Smash the like, sub to the channel, all that fun stuff, okay? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!